You can have the best, most popular creator business and creator brand, yet investors are not showing any interest. One of the reasons might be the key person risk. You see, when it comes to the investments, as an investor, I am giving you potentially millions of dollars with the hopes that we're going to take this business to the whole new level, going to turn it into some sort of enterprise that we can then later on sell to maybe another investor, go public and sell it to, multiple shareholders, or maybe sell it to some strategic company that's going to acquire and fold it into their bigger corporate brand. Why would I not like the creator as key person business? Well, primarily because if I realize as an investor that my millions of dollars of investment rely on the fact that you as a creator must remain at the helm of that company and must be as visible as you are today, must always perform the best way possible, always be ethical, always be perfect in the eyes of the consumer. Otherwise, you're risking completely destroying the value of those millions of dollars that I've invested in your business. Because of this, as an investor, if there is a very high dependency, no matter what kind of business you built, you could have built a candy company, you could have been, coffee company, clothing brand. If there is a huge dependency on you as a creator being in front of the camera every single day to represent the brand, that makes that investment very risky. And if I'm not confident you're going to be there, your heart will be in that game for a long term, enough at least for me to recoup my investment back and hopefully see that, 5, 6, 7x return, depending on the stage of the company that I'm investing in, I might not pull the trigger, no matter how amazing or attractive that business idea is. The second reason can be simply that you are not only the key person risk, but also your content is the only funnel of the customers towards that brand. Meaning, if you're not posting content, whether it's short form content, photos, if you're making long form videos, if you're a streamer, podcast, whatever they may be, if the only funnel or majority of the traffic that comes through to the website to then go subscribe to the service or purchase the product, if they're all coming from your content, that's a huge risk, because that tells me that, again, similar to key person risk, if for some reason you decide to stop making content, you take a break, or maybe you decide to change the direction of your content and completely redirect your business towards a new type of viewer, that business that I've invested in that is located downstream when it comes to that traffic from your content, that's it. That business is screwed, because I'm no longer acquiring any new customers, or at least potential prospects who are visiting the page. If you are building as a creator in both of those cases, a creator business, you need to untie yourself as much as possible from those potential red flags if you're really interested in raising funds from the investors. I'm going to cover both of them at the same time in terms of the solution. You have to develop the kind of brand that can stand on its own 2 feet, which very frequently means name it something different. Don't name it TohirT's Great Venture. It's a great venture. It's blah blah, whatever the name you came up with, and slowly let it grow on its own. Ensure it has consistent set of different traffic sources. So in the case of your content, it's absolutely fine that the first set of customers and prospects came from your content, but down the line, make sure you have strong Google search and SEO presence. You have social media presence across dedicated pages for that specific brand. Check out Ryan Trahan's brands and essentially see how, for example, for his candy company, right, they have enough of different social media presence across on their own dedicated pages that does not necessarily require Ryan to constantly go and promote and say, hey, go check out our page and kind of like buy yet another, right, like set of candies. No, he consistently can create content and, promote his brand, but also his brand has its own dedicated page. Finally, you can also have the paid acquired traffic, right? You can be paying for the ads through the Meta platforms, right? You can be paying through ads on YouTube or whatever other platform you might be. That's absolutely fine. Because again, if you have dedicated pages for those brands and those brands have their own name that doesn't necessarily completely rely on your image and likeness, this is a great start, because slowly they will develop their own presence. They can even develop their own social media language and how that business is presented. Like think of someone like Ryanair, someone like Duolingo. Those brands have a very specific type of social media presence that if you've seen them before, when I told you the brand names, you already remember the type of posts they make, and you don't necessarily have outside of maybe Duolingo Owl. you don't necessarily have a very specific person tied to that process. So, like an example of Duolingo, the social media manager who came up with this entire concept and with the entire pretty much brand presence for Duolingo recently retired, and she's kind of like doing her own thing now. But Duolingo can continue doing the same exact type of content because that owl mascot is not dependent on that specific person being inside of that mascot, if it makes sense. So consider, as you start building out the create a brand that you want to go and potentially pitch to the investors, make sure you isolate it from those two risks. So the key person risk and the risk of being super dependent on your content, by ensuring they have their own presence online, and that presence doesn't only require you to be in front of the camera constantly to support their eventual growth. The third risk you're potentially introducing is not having some sort of a moat, a protection against the competitive advantages of other companies. First and foremost, a few weeks ago, I made a dedicated video describing different parts of the moat and how you can potentially protect your business, but I would like to touch on it very briefly in this video. The idea of the moat is essentially creating a competitive fence, again, a moat, body of water that doesn't allow your competitors to cross and steal your customers, by essentially doing a few things differently, whether it's you personally and what you bring to the brand, whether the brand itself and what kind of like maybe quality it represents, or the kind of certain input products you use, or the certain style. There can be a lot of interesting different angles by which you ensure your brand has some sort of a competitive advantage compared to all the other similar brands out there in the world. A good example can be if, say, you're making leather goods, ensuring you have the best leather supply, or maybe it's a vegan quote unquote leather, right? And that's your angle, but you have it the highest quality and it looks great, and no one really can tell that it looks different from the real leather. It can be about certain type of things that you implement from the branding perspective. If you create this luxurious brand, like think of LV logo, right? Like Louis Vuitton, that's their own competitive mode. So the bags with Louis Vuitton logo on them already kind of like competitively protected against maybe some of the other competitor who just has a regular bag of equally great quality, but because the customer wants to show off the logo on the bag, they will go with that versus some other, maybe even potentially much cheaper alternative. So you kind of have to think through how can you defend your brand. And again, check out that full video because there are multiple different angles you can take. Primary thing that I would like to recommend to you, think of it early on. You can evolve your idea. You can eventually kind of like develop different ways by which you protect your brand. But early on, decide when you're doing your research, when you decide, okay, I'm going to create this service, I'm going to create this digital product or physical product, how am I going to position it in a way that will make it look completely different from everyone else? Or if you're developing something completely new to the industry, how can you ensure that eventually, as you start growing and as you start making revenue, how can you separate your brand against all the ankle biters, all those small companies that eventually will pop onto the market because they would want to replicate your success? Plan it, think about it, make sure it's always at the top of your mind. And as you develop the product, if, say, again, the quality is something that you're really standing by, make sure it's never jeopardized, because that becomes now your kind of like calling card when it comes to competitive advantage. If the customer tries to decide between your product and product from your competitor, what would be that call card? What would be that thing that they will say to their friends like, hey, I know these both products are great, but I'm picking TohirT's creator product because of X, Y, and Z. Think about it. Think about it at competitive advantage early. Ensure you always support it. Ensure it's at the core of the philosophy of your company. And as you evolve and develop, think of other ways to protect your brand. And the more protected your brand is, the more for me as an investor, it becomes attractive, because I understand that I'm not going to have to spend millions of dollars on trying to promote it or defend it against the potential competitors. I can focus that investment on actually growing the company, increasing the pipeline, ensuring I have bigger supply if it's a physical product, right? And evolving and growing the business, instead of worrying every single day that some other competitor will show up and completely will take over every single customer, which obviously will not going to be good for me if I'm investing a lot of money with you. The fourth big red flag that you can set off for the potential investor is that you don't have clear financial performance. For this one, you can also go and check out my videos where I made essentially a series of videos about how to raise funds between the pre-seed stage and all the way through Series B plus, when you're already kind of hopefully, $1 billion plus company, if that's something in your cards and something you want to explore in the future. But you will notice that across all of those videos, mini spoiler alert if you haven't seen them, being able to clearly communicate your performance, initially just like base performance in terms of how many viewers potentially you get on your page, how many of them convert to a paying customer, and so on and so forth. That data becomes more and more important and more critical when it comes to proving the financial performance of your business. So you have to ensure that financial data is easily accessible. You don't have to overthink it. A lot of platforms, if you say you're using like something like Shopify and you're selling digital goods or physical goods online, if you're using their subscription service or maybe using subscription service dedicated one, maybe you created your own page and you're using one of those plugins to create subscription right through one of the payment vendors, you need to ensure that data is easily visible and easily separatable from your standard business. Don't commingle investments. I would ideally recommend you, even from the bank account perspective, ensure it's separate bank account for your creator business, say create a brand, like where you put your AdSense, when you put money from the brand sponsorship, and a separate bank account for specifically the company itself. It's critical because you want to be able to quickly show to an investor, hey, here's my financial performance. Here's all the different metrics between the views, the conversions, how much money we make per each customer, all the way down to exact number of dollars, the cash that's sitting in the bank account. I can break it down to you and explain to you where this is going. This kind of information is critical because there's so many bogus companies out there trying to attract an investor, raise millions of dollars, and it turns out to be a complete scam. It turns out to be business that has no revenue. All the metrics are faked, and basically investor just got scammed. Trust me, happens way more than people are willing to admit, specifically, especially for their reputation. You probably have seen some high profile investment fraud cases, but primarily ensure you have those metrics. Again, you can easily export them. If it's not easily export, ensure you're working with a person who is maybe a business manager, maybe your operating partner, right? Who sits there and helps you to track it somewhere, maybe in like an Excel spreadsheet and a Google Sheet model. So you can always go and communicate to the investor and explain to them, here's how we're performing, here's all the things that we're doing. And per those videos that I was describing earlier, when I talk about different stages of the investment, it's also going to be critical then to slowly start showing where the puck is going when it comes to this business. Like, okay, if you're going to give me these couple of millions of dollars, dear investor, here's how I'm going to do it, here's how I'm going to allocate it, here's where the funds will go, and here's how it's going to yield us the return. The more data you have up front to go and communicate those things at the current state, the easier it will be for you to forecast and defend the future state of things. If you didn't capture the data, if you cannot tell apart your standard creative business within that sense and this business that you're trying to gain an investment for, you're going to set off a major red flag for many investors who would be very hesitant to go and invest with you because who knows, maybe you're just trying to pull a quick one on them, take their money, and run away. The final red flag that we're going to discuss today is your reputation. Yes, for especially those of you who like to be on that edge, who like to create this like edgy type of content, edgy brand presence, whatever. Maybe you act up, you curse a lot, whatever you might be doing. This is an important thing to consider. Investors, when they put money in your business, they also assume certain level of risk from your reputation. We already discussed the key person risk, and maybe you did all the right things. You have dedicated brand, all the social media pages, as I said, you have traffic coming from different directions, so it's business on its own. Unfortunately, at the very beginning, as you and an investor continue to grow the business together, your reputation will still have some effect on that brand. It's not completely possible for you to detach yourself from it, right? And we've seen plenty of boycotts of different companies based on their founders' performance, right? Or just in general, things that are happening around the brand. You can support the wrong person, you can do the wrong thing, you can say the wrong thing on social media, and you're gonna take off millions of dollars of value off of your business. And this is why it's critical for you, especially if you're in a kind of genre, which is absolutely fine, where that's your style, you like to be risky, you like to be edgy. Consider the fact that this also implies there's an inherent risk to partnering with you for an investor. And you can say, hey, I'll just need to find an investor who is equally edgy and whatnot. True, there will be investors out there who might vibe with that kind of approach, but ultimately, everyone in the investment industry are there to make money. They're not there to vibe, they're not there to make friends. They're there to ensure that for every dollar they invest, they see a minimum of X turns on of their return on their investment, basically. Like, right, they're not going to just make the money. Oh, and they're not going to invest money with you, make that money back and be happy. And that's actually a failure for them as a business, right? They will feel lucky if they feel like there was a lower potential to actually lose completely the funds. But it's even a failure sometimes if they make like 2 3x the money, especially if it's early time investors, right? Because for them, they anticipate much higher, sometimes 10x plus return on the investment. And the risky reputation of the co-founder, who will still be there, right? As much as we're going to detach the brands and we're going to ensure your brand kind of like for the creator is one side of the fence, and then this creator brand that you're building for the investment is the other side of the fence, there'll still be some influence. You'll still be sending traffic. You'll still be talking about it. You'll still be promoting it. People will still initially develop some sort of, cohesive vision of both of those brands. And the whole purpose of having separate traffic, separate brand pages, and all of those things is to ensure that initial volume of traffic that comes in and becomes the first set of customers, they are the only ones who kind of like know of you as a founder, and hopefully the future, millions and millions of customers who's going to come and purchase the product or acquire the service, subscribe to the service from that brand, they should come without ever even knowing you're linked to it. Like, this is the success of that strategy, and de-risking the key person risk and de-risking the fact that it always needs traffic from your content is when your new customers come in and they don't even know you're associated with the brand. But it's going to take a couple of years, a few years before that happens. So up until then, anything that you do, especially if you're doing something edgy, if you're always, pushing the line a little bit and exploring how far can you kind of like, evolve the narrative and risk it all, that risk will always echo back to the brand. And if I'm putting millions of dollars in that brand, I have to understand and I have to consider that level of risk. So in this case, it's hard for me to tell you, oh, just go and change yourself. Absolutely not, right? Like, you hopefully build the success based on that type of brand recognition, and that's something you will maintain and something the viewers find attractive and the reason why they watch your content and consume the different things that you produce. So that's absolutely fine, but just consider the fact that you cannot then treat the lack of potential interest from some, at least, of the investors as such a terrible thing, something personal against you. There's nothing personal against you. You just need to understand from their perspective, they're here to ensure they basically place the bet on the highest likelihood of success with the highest possible return. That's their entire job, always. And so anytime you introduce something that decreases their rate of success or decreases the amount of return they're going to get, that's going to make it less attractive for them to come back and invest in that business. So, key person risk, ensure the traffic is not only coming from your content, from the perspective, again, of the competitive advantages, make sure you have a moat, make sure you be able to clearly talk about the financial performance and separate the metrics from your standard business versus the business you're trying to attract the investment into. And consider the kind of brand you develop yourself and the kind of persona you carry online, because all of this, if played in the wrong way, will decrease the likelihood of the investors to come and be willing to co-invest with you in your creative business. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any other questions about this topic or maybe other red flags you have seen if you're an investor, and I'll see you next Saturday. Peace.